guys, and welcome back to another part of the Autism and Puberty panel. And I am recording this on my YouTube channel and on my podcast as well, which is the Social Wave Project. But honestly, I've got the shortest panel I've ever had in my life because a lot of people have dropped out because of COVID, apparently. But we've got two lovely people joining us. We've got a Lauren with us.
Hi.
And then we've got a James. Hi, James.
Hiya.
I know that, Lauren, you have been on my podcast last time, so this is your second time coming back. But
Yes,
James,
it is, yeah.
you haven't been on before, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm James. I'm 15 years old. I like reading, music, and writing. That's all my interests really.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that. Those are my favourite interests as well, really. So you're in the creative folk there. I like it, James. I like it. But yeah, I think with three people as well, it's going to be good. But I will jump in to help out if necessary. So we'll probably get right down into it, actually, without me having a sore throat. Excuse me. But we're just going to probably try and see how we go. But we are going to be talking about like a few different varieties because as well as James being 15 years old, he is going through puberty at the moment. And then me and Lauren, we've just gone past that. But I will jump in if anyone needs help. But yeah, and without further ado, let's just get into the panels. And by the way, guys, if you have been on the podcast before then and on my YouTube channel for the first part, then you'll know. But if not, then I will explain a little bit. And I always keep forgetting. A statement is like a question, but rather than asking a question, a statement is there to start off a conversation on each panel. But I think we'll just leave it at that, really. But if you want the full explanation, head over to part 1 for a bit more. But yeah, we'll kick off with the first statement for James. The term puberty can be difficult to process.
For me, like I can remember in primary school when we actually got introduced to the idea that our bodies would change. They didn't actually do a lot with us. They basically just when you in primary school, did you ever have like a talk about it, or is it just me? Put girls in one room and boys in another.
Yeah,
they did.
Right.
Yes.
That's what my primary school did, and I don't know what went on with the girls, but what happened with the boys was they basically just sat us in a circle and had us saying the names of female and male genitalia. And then we watched a video on body odours, and that was it. It was really confusing. I was like, what's going on exactly? But then when we went into high school, I think I was still trying to process the fact that I would go through puberty. But by then I knew that it happens to everyone. It's not just me. It's a normal thing. So I wasn't so stressed about it. And I'm not sure. I feel like everyone reacts to the concept of puberty, especially when you're autistic, in different ways. Because obviously the feeling of change is a bit scary towards some.
Yeah, it definitely is.
That's really similar actually to what I did at school, really, because with the girls, Lauren, I don't know if you went through this as well, but at primary school, we used to do the same thing, but the girls will all be in just one classroom and we would actually be shown video presentations about like, you don't smell very nice, on how with like body odors, body change, pubic hair. And we had to watch someone give birth to a baby, and that was traumatizing.
Yes. We did that as well.
Oh God.
It was funny, but I was like, oh God, I don't know what to do.
For me, I didn't find it hard to process as much because I'm very good with wanting to understand things scientifically, and I was able to find out scientific information to kind of process it in that way. So I mean, for us, when we're talking about obviously how it happened at school, so we kind of had a session saying about year 5 where it was like on a lunchtime they just made the girls stay inside and all the boys were outside like, oh, what's going on in there, like I wonder what they're all talking about. And they just sat us down and talked about periods for a bit. And so we were literally just sat in a room and they were just like, yeah, okay, this is what happens. And then they were like, yes, it's just about, it's a tablespoon of blood, here's a tampon, we'll put it in some water, look, it expands. And we were like, oh, okay, thanks. And then that was it. That was the that was the period talk, that was it. And then in year 6, they had all the boys and girls together in a room filling in like worksheets together. So you had to partner up with someone and label parts of the body and like what they do and things like that. So you had to like work with partners and stuff like that. And they the way that they got around explaining things like sex and that was they just showed a video, but it was like cartoon people running around and having a pillow fight. And then it was like, this is how you make children.
When I actually watched the video, this is like something, we watched a video about like cartoon people where you can actually look and you watch them having sex. When you can actually find out what's everything going. It is true traumatizing to think about it.
It was awful.
Right. My opinion is that boys don't have a good understanding of periods because they've not. I mean, I get why they separate the boys and the girls because obviously I feel like boys should understand what is going on with the girls because they're like, oh, you're on your period. Like, it's supposed to be an insult.
Definitely, yeah.
I've never made jokes about periods because I've always understood what they are. But like, because when I'm in class and people are like, oh, periods hurt, it's not funny. There's blood coming out of a vagina. It's not hilarious, is it?
Yeah, exactly. That was the jokes that people always got at school.
Yeah, I just think it's really unfair.
Yeah.
Honestly. And like, a few months ago, there was an incident at my school where a supply RE teacher, for some reason, had been given a box of tampons and other kinds of contraceptives. And the class found out. This is what I had been told by a teacher, and it was, oh my God. I went into the classroom, condom wrappers, tampons everywhere. I was like, what the hell has gone on? This is a Catholic school, by the way.
That's a Catholic school as well.
No, do you know what? Yeah. I went to a Roman Catholic school as well, but this is actually quite surprising.
It was really shocking, and I was like, well, why are you messing around with them?
That's really interesting when you think about it, because when I went to the school, but I have mentioned it in the last panel as well, but when I went to the school, all you just learnt really was just like drawings of like the vagina, really, drawn by male teachers, and that was pretty awkward. It was just bland anyway. But anyway, we'll move on to the next statement because I think this is a connection to the other one. Autistic children and teenagers struggle throughout puberty, and I think that was a connection to the first one that we've done before. But Lauren, do you want to start off with this?
Yeah, so I mean, for me in particular, of course, I didn't know that I was autistic at the time. But again, as I've mentioned, for me, it was finding like scientific explanations that kind of helped me through it. So for me, going through puberty, it was more I could I always knew that I could ask my mum or my older sister because they always made it very apparent that I could ask them about anything if I ever needed to. So I always had them to explain things to me. But then I see a lot of children that I think, like I see various parents posting things in online groups where say like because the school know that their child is autistic, but they often assume incompetence. So a lot of the time, which is really bad, is that they'll assume that because an autistic kid won't ever be interested in having, say, like sexual relationships and things, they don't need to know about puberty and things like that. So I think there are a lot of autistic children that get left behind in that respect. And then because they've not been taught about their bodies properly, they'll then struggle through it because they just don't have any idea what's going on. And especially with sex education and puberty in schools anyway, they don't tend to use actual scientific terms. They can often use like euphemisms for things and metaphors, and that's obviously not very good if you're autistic and you can't understand metaphors and different things. We need like very direct communication. So in that respect, I think a lot of autistic kids can struggle through puberty because it's just not clear exactly what's going to happen. But I feel like if they had it where it was explained scientifically in these are the exact processes that are going to happen and this is why, and if once you've got that explanation, you can think, oh, okay, well, I actually know what's going on now and I know why. And I think that was what really helped me. So I think that's one of the reasons why autistic kids might be left behind and struggle through puberty.
My opinion on this is that I feel like everyone struggles throughout puberty anyway, because obviously lots of changes happen in your body, but like when you're autistic and you're scared, of those changes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, changes are coming, and you're like, oh no, I don't want these changes to happen. I don't want them to happen. Why are they happening to me? Blah, 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 blah. I feel like it, like the anxiety caused is like times by 10. Like with Lauren saying autistic kids left behind, that is so true. Like, I feel like the stigma, like obviously since say, I don't know, since say like 50 years ago, like nobody even knew what autism was. And then like now, yeah, we have gone on a lot. It has got a lot more easier to be diagnosed, but obviously there is still that stigma around it. And I feel like they might not be interested in having boyfriends or girlfriends. That doesn't mean this, like, puberty isn't just about sex. It's like, obviously it's preparing the body to either have sex or to produce babies or whatever, but obviously there are other things as well. And I feel like, again, like Lauren said earlier, with in leaving them out, they'll think, oh, it's another thing that I've been left out of. I do feel that in school, autistic children will find it harder to be accepted into that kind of community. Was that the case with you two, or?
I mean, for me, the main thing that affected me was that I started my period a lot later than a lot of the other girls that I knew at school. So in that respect, I always felt very left out because everybody would always be talking about things. I was kind of a bit of a late developer. So especially things like PE changing rooms in secondary school, when of course everybody's got to get changed together, everybody's there, especially with the girls, everybody is constantly judging what deodorant you have, what type of bra you're wearing, if you need to wear a bra, and they're constantly picking at each other and being like, oh, well, so-and-so is not wearing these, or whatever underwear you decide to wear. Like, it's such a picky time. And at that time, I just wanted to wear comfortable things and go to school and do PE, and I wasn't bothered about any of that. But I think you become very aware of things like that, especially when you're autistic as well, and you already have a tough time fitting in. And then you're in this environment where there's just loads of people, everybody's developing at different stages, and everybody's just constantly picking out what everybody's doing. And that was always difficult, having to be in all the changing rooms for PE. That's the one thing I can really remember.
I agree with you, Lauren, there, because even though I went to like my secondary school was an all-girls school as well as Catholic, it was I know I've mentioned this in the first part quite a lot, but I do remember about like do sharing the changing rooms again, but I remember everyone was just like mucking about and like at the time, and I can remember like a few times the girls did muck about, but they did muck about just because they wanted to show off how fancy like their underwear was, or
Yeah.
like a little bit like that. And some of the underwear, it really shocked me, and like, we don't want to see that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's a private thing. And girls didn't really know about like privacy. And I felt so embarrassed and so uncomfortable to be around them, actually.
Yeah.
And that's what put me off with like hanging out with some of the girls, really. And I don't mean it in a horrible way, but that was just a sensory overload thing, I think.
Yeah.
I never got judged for that, but I think one time I did get judged for my body weight, because even though I am considered as obese at the moment, I think I was a little bit very obese when I was a teenager, really. And I think I did once I did get bullied for that once, so that was really painful, but I never told anybody about it. So
Yeah.
that was the only bad experience I've had, really, but it was just for a silly joke, really, for them. But
Yeah.
I thought that's not funny at all. That's really
Yeah. It
uncomfortable.
was, I always remember things like that as well. I remember being in year 8 and being in the changing rooms, and then because everybody was like comparing each other, it would be like one week one girl would turn up with like a thong or something like really lacy and stuff, all proper, and then the next week, because everybody had seen them wearing it and they were like, oh no, well, I'm not grown up enough, I'm not wearing all of these things, then they would start, until it just begun like a trend of that. So in the end, it ended up when there were like me and similar people that obviously weren't wearing the more grown-up types of underwear and things, because that just wasn't what we wanted to wear. You just kind of get nitpicked for that, and they would always be comparing others' bodies and things, and like with like very skimpy underwear, and I was like, I'm 12, I just want to get changed and go play football. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, like with me in the changing rooms, it's been like this from like the get-go in high school. In primary school, it wasn't so much a bad thing. It was just I didn't get bullied in the changing rooms in primary school, but then like when high school came around and people were a lot more seemingly knowledge
Yeah.
about sexuality, I did start to get a lot of comments and backlash and stuff about my sexuality because, okay, I'll admit, I came out very young. I came out about just after, like, a couple of months after Christmas in year 7.
Yeah.
It's like just after the first term. And, like, especially with it being a Catholic school, it spread round in about 5 minutes. And then, like, I was known as the one year 7 kid who was gay. Like, I wasn't known as James. I was just known as the gay kid. And I was like, oh, okay, I can somehow manage this. And then, like, I've had this is like recently, I've had a couple of people like making like comments like, "Ooh, Daddy McLoughlin." I'm like, what?
Yeah.
1, you're straight. Ew. 2, just why? What is the point?
It never has any point to it. It's just they can say it so they want to, and they do, and it never has any kind of reasoning to it. It's always just silly comments.
That's it, and it just was like, excuse my French, it's just the one that people want to off each other. It's bullying, really, and it's just to attract the attention, really. And I've got to jump in this well, James. I've got so many friends who are gay and transgender, and they had similar situations like that, which is awful because you don't really want to be in that situation, really. And if you do come out early, and there will be a lot of kids who will make fun of you for it. That's their problem, not yours.
I can remember when I did come out, and I came home one day crying my eyes out because of like all the backlash and stuff. And this started from like when I left school. I started crying on the bus, and people just looking at me like, was just like, why is he crying? And I was like, I can remember getting home, and I can remember my nan saying to me, "Listen, James, half those kids are going to be gay. They just won't know it yet, and they're just jealous of you." I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, the one thing that I have always said right from coming out is that I don't understand why people would want to hide who they are, but obviously I don't know their situations. So again, I might not understand it properly, but I'm not going to judge them. Like they might have a number of different reasons, but I keep the opinions to myself because I know how it feels to be judged.
I feel that mainstream and or specialist schools didn't support me when talking about puberty in lessons.
So I feel like a lot of the times, although teachers often tried hard, they just didn't have the full knowledge to be able to answer things in the best capacity. So things like that where they feel like they don't support you, I feel like most of the time it's just because they don't have like the more professional knowledge. But I feel like if schools were able to actually have someone in that was more designated to talk about that, it may have been a lot better. And as well, if they had different types of people in there to actually talk about things, the main thing that would have been really useful for everybody in our year, I think, would have been, again, say if the girls and the boys weren't separated. I don't see why they still do that, to be honest, because I think everybody needs to know exactly everything that's going on for everyone. Just because it's knowledge about the human body, whatever puberty you go through, it's still knowledge about a human body, which is just science. So I feel like to support students better, they could have done that, because there were lots of girls that were, again, bullied by boys that would take the mick out of periods and things like that. But then say there were girls that maybe didn't know anything about the boys, and there was just no one really kind of felt supported in that way, because I feel like if everybody was educated in the right way, there maybe would have been a lot less bullying in that respect, and that would have been a brilliant amount of support, just because of the sheer amount of bullying that had gone on. And say maybe if they actually taught girls about things like body image, that went in a good way of looking at it, that would have helped so many people. Because when obviously my year was going through puberty, that was when people were like getting iPhones and stuff. So everybody was just starting to get like iPhone 5s and things like that, and everyone was going through school, getting on Instagram. Like everybody had just started getting on Instagram, so it was just right as things were really starting to ramp up with social media. So that was a pretty bad time for us, and I feel like schools did not manage that period in time properly. Obviously we can see it now in hindsight, but they could have supported us so much better through puberty if we had knowledge of what to look out for on the internet and not to compare yourself to other people. So I think that's one way that they could have supported us better.
And what about you, James? Considering that with everything that you're going on through at the moment, what do you think, as you are, like, say for example, you're walking back into your classroom one day and you've just started your GCSEs, what would you say to a teacher if you feel that, oh, sir or miss, I don't feel that I've got the right support, what I need. What can you do to help me with this? Or is there another reason? Can you help me understand with this? Is it something like that you were interested in, like in talking in, if you were ever to do that in a personal perspective?
For me, I don't like with what Lauren said about separating the boys and girls. I feel like it just, from that, it creates more stigmatization about like periods and stuff. And I'm just going to turn my lamp on one sec. There we go. So, and then like with what Lauren said about body image, I feel like with the girls, it's like, oh, who's big, who's small, who's tall, who's whatever. And then with the boys, I feel like it is about size, mainly size. And I snogged whatever such a body last night. Well, did you, or are you just making it up? I feel like I think everyone will feel pressure to like lie to make themselves sound like the top dog. But whilst I'm actually, I was thinking about this earlier because I watched a film I watched a really good like film based on a true story called After Thomas, about a little boy from somewhere in Scotland with autism, and it really got me thinking, how do you approve of the way that autism is portrayed in the media, with stuff like The Good Doctor and or just disability in general, really? Because like I don't think there's a lot of, I can't really remember there being a lot of autistic people, already like diagnosed autistic people in TV shows and stuff. I can remember there being a character from the Story Chase Beaker, the show from CBBC, if you
yeah, that generation.
Yeah.
Remember the character Marco used to dress up all the time?
Yes.
And I thought he does show traits of autism in that he's kind of like secluded, and he has, not secluded, but you know what I mean, like
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and that's like one particular friend, and then I was thinking, wow, that didn't occur to me when I was little, because I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't really know what autism was until I asked my mom. I can remember this now. Mom, why am I weird? Me at 8 years old saying, Mom, why am I? Because I didn't know how else to put it, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it does make sense actually, because you felt like when you're 8 years old, you were questioning your identity, really. I mean, when I was 10, I wasn't told I was autistic. I only found out when I was doing like a program that I was doing for 6 weeks that was funded by my local council. That's how I was like told, like in like I think on the piece of paper, really, that I was autistic, which is kind of weird, but
not the best way, but it's a way. There's a
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
I feel like there should be more representation about autism. Like, it has been getting better, like with the show The A Word on BBC. That is a really good that is a good drama, actually. And I watched it and I thought, well, this does make sense. But I also feel like it could be more like delving into like seeing it from their point of view, if that makes sense. Because then, at least then, the people will watch it and be able to be like, well, oh, okay, so this is how they're feeling. This is what their triggers are and stuff, and this is how, and it might like generate awareness to try and help them more.
Right, the next one, and this is going to be an interesting one because I will jump onto this quickly just as an example. I learned about puberty through other resources slash people, and that means and or people instead of parents and school. So this for me, as well as doing that, because I did learn it through parents and school, but there was a book that I thought was the Holy Bible. And I know I can't really say it as much, but I know it's by a company called Usborne. No, yeah, it's the one about growing up, about puberty, and it has an extra section as well about babies and all of that, and then pregnancy. And I thought, yeah, that was the Holy Bible, but I'm so gutted I chucked it out because that would have been really perfect to show. But I
Yeah.
think it's just me. I just got bored of it after I came over the puberty stage. But what do you guys think?
For me, there wasn't really like a specific book, but I do remember my friend having. This is going to sound really childish, but bear in mind I think we were in year 6. We were either in year 6. It was in primary school. In primary school. So my friend had this book that she'd got from the local library, and we sat there laughing at the drawings. It's like,
I think everyone did that at some point. I had a friend that had a book like that, and they brought it into school specifically because it was a funny book, and everyone would just sit and read it and laugh at it.
No, you guys are absolutely the opposite. Because for me, when I had like my book to read, I just read it on my own, really, because I wouldn't play with much of the other kids. I just wanted to be like away, and then at playtime, I would just like sit myself in the corner, hide away from the students, and just read that book 24/7 all by myself. So that was
Yeah.
really interesting. That your both experiences are similar.
yeah, I mean, I think most people have done that at some point because they can't understand what the drawings are. So they just so they get nervous and just like laugh.
Yeah.
Which would explain it. We're not pervs, we're just not experienced. That's the way I'm going to put it out there to solidify that I'm not a perv. That's the other way I can put it, really.
Oh no! I mean, like it's understandable, really, because I think anyone that I come across so far, none of them are pervs, really. So I think we could say that it could be like, yeah, okay, that's put to rest. But it's just like this interesting thing because you do get nervous about those things, and then you just don't know how to like properly react, and it's understandable because you're still processing everything. When say if you were like 12 or 13, or maybe even younger as 9 or 10.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is one thing that they also don't tell you, that a lot of people also might go through puberty a lot younger. So that's so much extra for those people to process that are going through it younger, because if you're going through it later, you kind of feel like you're on your own, but then everyone else has kind of done it. What happens if you're like the first person in your year group and it's just happening to you? Like, that would be absolutely terrifying. So I can imagine that for those people, they might find other ways to learn from people because they might not have their peers to talk to, or so they might have to find other methods to talk to people because it might not be a thing where at school they talk about it yet, because they might have started earlier than when school catches up to start teaching things. So I imagine for those people it would be quite lonely, and they would have to find other ways, like maybe books and things like that if there was a book that they found, or they might be embarrassed to ask their parents because none of their friends are going through it, or they might think that they're abnormal because they've gone through it like sooner than everyone else. So I imagine for those types of people that they might have to find other resources to learn from. For me, I kind of had like my parents, so my mum and my older sister as well. My sister's about 3 or 4 years older than me, so I've always been able to talk to her about things because we're obviously still in the same generation, but she is that little bit older. So I've always been very comfortable talking to her and asking questions with her. So I've been very grateful for having her around.
I do have an older brother or sister, but they're way, way older than me, so I didn't really have like that support at all. But I know that I had extra support at school, and then I had a bit of support at home as well. But I would like feel so embarrassed, especially about talking about like periods in front of boys. I use code words for boys,
Yeah.
and I always if they say to me, "Oh, what's wrong?" I always say it's my stomach or it's lady time.
To be fair, I mean, like the one I've heard, like with you saying like code words, I've heard Auntie Aggie a lot. That like or Auntie Oma or something. There's always an auntie, always an auntie. Like Auntie Oma's come to stay for the week. Like what? That was used to confuse. Like, I was like, you've got an auntie. No, no, James, never mind. Just no.
That's why I think it's always better for things like for education around puberty and things, especially for autistic kids, when you talk about it in a scientific way, because I think a lot of parents can often think like, oh, they don't want to talk about those things, or it's like not a subject that you want to talk about. But it's so much better when you use actual scientific terms for parts of the body and processes that are going on, because then it just eliminates that confusion, because you're straight to the point telling someone exactly what's going to happen and when, and it's the proper words. And as well, that is actually a really good point, especially through puberty and then with younger kids, actually teaching them the names of their body parts, the proper names, because one thing that is a really big problem, sadly, is in cases of child sexual abuse, and because kids don't know the proper names of their body parts and then they're being questioned about it and they're using euphemisms for it, it's not very clear in reports like police reports and things. So it's extremely important to be scientific and straight to the point and eliminate any of that confusion and just straight away say, look, it's these parts of the body that are involved, they do this, and here's the science behind it, because it just gets rid of all of that and it can eliminate so many issues in the future as well. I mean, certainly for me, knowing that I could have a scientific grasp on things, I ended up being the one that would end up talking to my peers where they were confused, because I would be like, well, look, here's the scientific stuff, because I found science interesting. And when I was then taught about it in that way, I'd be able to say to people like, yeah, well, this is what happens and this is why, and it's actually quite interesting. And I think that in a way helped a lot of people when they realized like, oh, it's like an actual process that's like actually quite like, there's all these kinds of hormones and chemicals and things that are involved. It's actually very scientific, and I think that definitely helps people.
I feel uncomfortable talking about the topic in front of people or online. So that means, do you feel uncomfortable about talking about it in front of people? Like, say, if you want to give a presentation on it, or if you feel uncomfortable by listening to someone saying it online or watching video, something like that. It's just a few examples.
I do feel uncomfortable talking about it in terms that, like, yeah, I know it's going on. I know that it's going on inside of ballers, but I don't like I don't really trust to like open up about, like, I just don't really feel comfortable talking about it, like stuff like that. With saying that it was, if it was online, if it was anonymous, I would probably just like put in a random like just username and just go, well, this is happening, what do I do? And then hope that I got some helpful advice where I wouldn't be afraid of people like judging me about it.
Yeah, just saying, I think that's really important, especially for teenagers that are going through puberty, to know that they have a safe space to discuss it. And I think partly that's the reason why many kids maybe grow up feeling uncomfortable, because say when you're in these environments where say like with mine, where for the main part of sex education we were all in the same room, the boys and girls were mixed, that was then there was like a lot of laughing, a lot of giggling at different processes. And I think they should have explained to us like, it's okay to find it funny and be nervous about it, but this is a safe space for people to discuss things, and these are things that go on. I think when people know that they can feel safe about discussing things and that nothing's wrong with you and you're not disgusting or any of these things, I think that then allows a lot of people to grow up and think, oh, well, I can talk about these things and no one's going to judge me for it because I've already had that reassurance that nothing's wrong with me and I'm not this disgusting human. It's happening to everyone and I have the right to know about my own body. I think that would be really good if people had that reassurance and it would get rid of the uncomfortableness of it. I think it comes with age as well. I think when I was your age, James, I mean, it was only like 5-6 years ago now, but I probably would have also been just as uncomfortable. I think it does come with age where you get to a point where you see like a lot more people on the internet that talk about these things very openly. Of course, like there's various different podcasts where people will just discuss sex, or they will just discuss like women's health or just any kind of health in particular. And when you're exposed to all these people that are talking about it so openly on the internet, you just get to a point, and when you're surrounded by like-minded people, you're out of that secondary school environment, you start being opened up to new experiences and you think, oh well, this actually isn't that awkward or uncomfortable or as big of a deal as what I thought it was. It's just a thing that happens and that's it. And I think it can take a fair few years once you get out of, say, primary school, secondary school, to kind of be opened up to that and be a bit more kind of open-minded and think, oh, this is just a thing that happens and that's it, and everyone actually does talk about it.
That was a really good point. Thanks, Lauren. That was a really good point.
I think we'll probably move on from that, because I know that in a certain age, really, when you feel comfortable and uncomfortable, this is the one question that always comes into mind, and this is the thing that I think people may or may not agree with. But the next statement is, I feel puberty lessons should start before primary school age. So I think there was a little bit of something on the news media a few years ago where like teachers were trying to get like children to learn about puberty before they started year one or reception or nursery, from what I can remember. But I think this is a few years ago. But if it was the case, if it does happen now, or if it's still occurring, would you two agree with that, or do you disagree?
I think what they can do is maybe go at it from like the human body perspective anyway, because I mean, before like kind of year one primary school age, kids kind of know basic things, like basic parts of their body. They know like, oh, that's my stomach, or they know different things like that. I think it's good to, again, like I said earlier, include things like the reproductive system in that, just so that they know what things are called, like any other organ in the body that they would be taught about otherwise. And they should teach them the function of that. And that way, again, it eliminates that stigma early, so that right in primary school or before primary school, they're taught, well, this is just an organ that I have and it does this, same as any other part of the body. So that then when they get to a point, say in primary school, when they're being slowly introduced to these questions about puberty more, they already have kind of a sub-understanding of, oh, well, hi, I have this organ and it does this, but then they can add more information to that and they think, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And so I think it's a good idea for them to introduce it early, but obviously not bombard them with information. So I think it's very good for them to say, well, these are the body parts that you have and this is what they do, so that they are prepared for that change. It's not so big of a step from, I have no clue what this does, to all these changes are going to happen to you when you hit this age. It's all going to be all these changes, this is going to happen, and your body's going to completely change. And I think that's too daunting. There needs to be they need to be like supported through that, and I think that would really help if they were introduced to it early.
I completely agree with you, Lauren. I feel like I don't think like the concept of puberty should be introduced until children are like old enough to like handle it responsibly, maturely, like key stage 2. Like I feel like if you like said about puberty in year 1, they wouldn't understand it at all. But I do understand, and I completely agree with what you said about like just introducing the body parts to them, because like going through like, this is your stomach, this is your esophagus. I was just thinking, these are your lungs. This is what they do, and like just go through each organ, because at that age, like the reproductive system is just another load of organs to them. They don't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have the stigma attached to it. They don't know that they're not going to relate it to sex at that age anyway. I think that's what a lot of parents at the time were worrying about when they heard that schools might be teaching puberty earlier. I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be like giving them graphic content on sex and things, but nothing's graphic anyway in primary school. The standard of sex education we got in year 6 wasn't exactly graphic, but I think a lot of parents can jump to that straight away and they don't want it, but they literally just need to be told, here are the names of these organs, same as we tell you that your stomach's a stomach or your brain's a brain. They need to know, well, that's a uterus and you can carry children, it does this. And they need to be taught things like that, just the same as any other organ in the body, because say like a 5 or 6 year old is not going to look at that and be absolutely terrified. They're just going to think, well, it's the same as my stomach, it's just another thing that does something else. They don't have that stigma attached to it.
I don't think they have their mind is developed enough to like be able to withhold that information and not completely like freak out. Like if you told a 6-year-old girls have uteruses, they use them to carry children, they would probably just go, what? This doesn't make sense at all. What is it? They would ask them, they would like strip the information down to the bare minimum and ask questions about it, like every single part, because that's what little kids do.
They do. They ask a lot of questions.
I've got my 3 eldest nephews, bless them. The questions they ask me sometimes, oh my God, I don't know how to respond to them. I'm like, why are you asking me? Go ask your mom or something like that. I don't respond to that. I mean, they are little kids, but it's like, what?
No, I mean, this is like kind of like the thing though, because little kids are just like, oh, I'm actually quite curious, but what does it mean? And I'm like, I'll ask a different person, because for hearing it from mum and dad can be a bit embarrassing. So that could be another like bit. But I think that it will be good in primary school age just to learn. But the most important thing to learn, which I personally feel, is that how should people touch you in like certain areas? What's okay and what isn't okay?
Definitely,
And I think the NSPCC has like supported this really, and I am going to say this from personal experience. I was like sexually abused when I was a child, and I had to go to the NSPCC for it. And when I was older, I was sexually abused as well. And I know that both of those stuff is not okay. And I feel that in primary school, I wasn't given enough support to know about, especially in the classroom, to know about what's okay to touch, what's not okay to touch. I mean, fair enough, at home, then you can get support on that really. But in schools, it is so important. And I think if there's no school that is doing this really, then shame on them really, because they need to actually do something more to progress with that, to stop like the sexual abuse happening for kids especially.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we never had anything like that where it was like places that are acceptable to be touched, places that aren't. I think they need to start conversations, say about consent and enforcing boundaries as soon as you're younger, so that they tell you that, look, if someone say touches you in a way that you don't like, you tell them to stop, you tell them no, and you make it known. I think that would have helped so many children if they say, look, this is inappropriate, this is fine, but nobody is allowed to touch you unless you ask them to, or you say yes and you're okay with them doing that. That would prevent not only issues in childhood, but I think a lot of people, when they don't have that knowledge as a child, then carry that through to adulthood, because it's just not enforced from a young age that you are allowed to say no, and you are allowed to enforce your own boundaries and only do things that you are comfortable with. And again, like you says like that would be so essential for preventing child sexual abuse, again with things like teaching kids exactly the names of body parts instead of euphemisms. Like they're just glancing over the top of the problem and it's not actually solving anything. Whereas if you tell a child you can say no, if someone touches you here, that is inappropriate, and they say the name of it, because then that way, if something were to happen and they were asked by someone like NSPCC or the police or someone, they can say, so and so touched me here and I didn't like it, and that's straight to the point. And that's very easy then for the police to then write up in a report, and they can't process it any other way or make it out into any other different meaning. And I think that would be it's so essential that children need to be taught that.
I feel more could be done to make puberty educational lessons autistic friendly.
Yeah.
Definitely. There could be a lot. I mean, I think, again, I'm going to have to go back to the point about the whole direct communication and not using euphemisms. I think that benefits everybody, not just autistic kids as well. I mean, everybody's, obviously, this is an anxious time when you're going through puberty, all the changes, and I think a lot of the time it can seem like you're not getting proper answers out of people. I think there was a few times where, say, if I did ask questions, they just kind of respond with surface level answers, and whether that's because they don't have the knowledge or they just don't want to have a conversation with you that they might not be fully comfortable with. And I think for that, they need to have people, to make it autistic friendly, they need to have people there that are willing to have these longer and deeper conversations and answer questions that people have, instead of glancing over things and then not explaining it in full detail. So we need those scientific terms. We need to know the processes behind things. I like to know exactly what's going on when, and I like to know exactly why, because otherwise I'm just going to be thinking so many questions like, well, I don't really know why, and then that's when you just get anxious about it. So again, I think they need more staff that are equipped to have that time to deal with these longer, deeper questions that students will have, because I've always been a question asker as an autistic child. I've always wanted to know exactly why things happen, and I think a lot of kids are the exact same. So that would really help, just having those people there willing to deal with it in a scientific way, explain everything with actual words so that there's no ambiguity about it, and it just cuts out the middleman. It's straight to the point. I think that would help so many autistic children.
I feel like with what Lauren said, little kids, like in general, little kids are really curious about what they're told, and they're like, well, why has this happened? Why has that happened? And then like with autistic children, it's like they want to know exactly. They don't just want like a little metaphor or euphemism or whatever. They want to know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would just be best if they just did that anyway, instead of like, so let's say they were teaching them about like sperm and stuff, and some kid asked, well, why does it do that? And the teacher doesn't know how to respond to that question. I feel like it would make more sense if they just like explained it anyway, because then it can prevent the questions being asked. And then, I mean, obviously questions would be encouraged anyway, but like to explain it to the best of their ability, and to prevent like the awkwardness of them asking those kind of questions.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know I'll probably jump onto the point quickly with that, really. A couple no, actually, it was during the pandemic, like lockdown, I actually saw educational videos about puberty that were learning disability friendly. So it focused on autism and Down syndrome, about puberty. But these were made, and they were only for children in American schools, not for the UK.
Oh.
And I was actually quite surprised, because
Yeah.
like, the Americans are doing it right, why not the British?
Yeah, the thing is, like, a lot of accommodations and changes that need to be made to different areas of education, they don't just benefit disabled children that are learning about it, they always benefit everybody else. Like, if certain issues are talked about very clearly with clear instructions, and everybody is told that it's understandable that you are anxious about it, this is a very like big time. And I think if people just had that reassurance that maybe might be targeted at autistic children to help us deal with the change, or to let us know that there are people we can talk to and everything is very clearly set out, that doesn't just benefit us, say, like as autistic teenagers, that benefits every single person going through that school system, who then has someone that is willing to be there for and be reassuring and actually explain everything in a very good way. So I think a lot of times schools think, well, I can't do all of these things to cater to autistic students, because they might think, oh, it's going to cost, or it's going to be too expensive, and it's going to take up too much time. But they are really simple things, as just making sure that you're clear with your communication, and that doesn't cost anything, to be kinder and more reassuring towards students and just be that little bit clearer. It doesn't cost anything and it benefits everyone.
The last statement we're going to point out, really, and as everyone knows, I like to have a positive ending to each and every one podcast episode or YouTube video. So the last statement is, I think more could be done to make puberty more inclusive. So it's kind of like a power statement to what you believe in. So what do you both think?
Definitely, I completely agree with that statement. Obviously, a lot has changed for the better. But there are still changes to be made. Like we were just saying about in the last statement, like they need to be more friendly for autistic kids, Down syndrome, all different kinds of disabilities. And then also, I feel like I don't think sexuality should be like pushed at it, like in reception stuff, because just like simpler, just like saying, some people have a mum and a dad, some people have two dads, some people have two mums, some people have one dad, one mum, whatever. It's like just not go into detail, but like explain it to an extent that they'll be able to understand. And then like when they're older in primary school, like go into a bit more detail and explain that I wouldn't say like go into detail about homophobia, but obviously like explain the concept of it and be like, everybody has the right to be who they want to be. Being gay it's not like a choice. I've had a few people say, well, why are you gay? It's like they think, oh, James woke up today and thought, oh, I'll be gay. I'm actually boys now. But it wasn't really like that. It's not like that, funnily enough.
Yeah, it's definitely a really good point, because like you say, yeah, like disabled kids need to be included, but at the same time there are so many kids that go through school where sexuality isn't brought up at all, and all they're bombarded with is pictures of straight couples, and it's sex education that only includes straight people. And again, like things like puberty, it's not inclusive of students that say might be intersex or trans. It's not inclusive of all the different types of people that there are, and that needs to be done. So again, like at a younger age, again, kids will pick up anything. The kids are the most accepting people that I know of. If you tell them that some people have two mums, some people have two dads, they are not going to bat an eyelid at that. They are just going to think, oh, that's okay, well, there's different types of families and people can love different people, because kids they've not got to that point yet where they've been taught that certain things are good or weird and certain things are bad or they're not bad. And so I think they need to start that from a young age. But then when it gets to puberty, we were always pushed the idea that sex is only for making babies, and that's all you're ever taught. And I think they can change that by saying that love is a thing, and you can say that some people have sex for fun. It's not always to make children, and there are different types of couples that exist, and it's okay for you to be attracted to different people, and explain all these different things, but in a way that it's equal, so that, say, it's not talking about straight people as the priority, but it's not talking as anyone else as the priority. It's just saying these are things that happen and can coexist. Like, some people like women, some people like men, some people like nobody, and you can be any kind of person, especially now being more inclusive about trans kids. I worry for trans kids at the moment that are going through school and maybe don't have someone that's supportive of them. So I think we definitely need it to be from a young age that we're accepting of people where their gender or their sex isn't as simple or as one or the other, and that needs to be expressed to kids so that it's okay, so that they don't get to that point in secondary school where they feel left out, they feel odd, they feel dirty, they feel horrible, and then they're picked on that by other kids. So again, like things like talks about puberty, I really feel for trans kids that maybe might be going through the wrong type of puberty for them. and then they're having to live through that. So we definitely need it to be, again, if it was mixed gender and so it wasn't separated, I think that itself would actually help a lot of trans kids, because if they know about the different types of puberty and what goes on, then when it comes to them making decisions about their bodies, obviously when you are at that age going through puberty, you can't get access to HRT or anything, but you can get puberty blockers, so that then once they are having an equal education, so they know what happens with each different type of body, they then have that information and the power to make their own choices and make the right choice for them, and so that all of their decisions are informed. And I think that's exactly what we need. We need everybody learning about everybody, and that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I probably won't have anything to say, because I think you both said what you had to say anyway. So I think definitely, I think my answer is going to be the same. And I think with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Lauren, James, thank you so much for coming on today. You both have been really amazing actually, like the chattiest panel I've ever had as well. So thank
And
you
there's
so
only
much
three
for
of
coming
us.
on despite last minute changes.
Thank you for having us. And to say that there's only three of us, I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah,
Not too bad.
we have, haven't we? So if you want to go check out Lauren and James, can you tell everybody your social network names and how we find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at neurodiversity with Loza. I'm also on TikTok and YouTube under the same name, but mainly active on Instagram. I just write about whatever topic I find interesting that might be good. So if you feel like reading about random things I find interesting related to autism and disability, then you can find me there.
Okay, and James?
With me, I don't really do like social media posts about autism and stuff. I try and like put more like energy into my writing. I am actually working on a play at the minute, which I'm hoping will, fingers crossed, will get produced. I don't think it will like immediately, but I'm still in like the writing stage of it. Yeah, who knows?
Oh,
Brilliant.
fingers crossed for you, James. That will definitely be amazing if you do. So anyway, yeah, we did cut off really. So I'm adding like an extra recording. So Zoom did cut us off for a second. But anyway, so go check out James and Lauren. And yeah, it's definitely great to have you both on. And until then, I will catch you on the next part of the Autism and Puberty panel. I hope you have a wonderful day. And yeah, take care of yourselves, everybody. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.